Okay, here's what I'm thinking is what I want to make sure that we cover is, and I wrote down a few topics, but the one that I really want to cover, and as a guest on your show, I'm of course the expert, except just the opposite. The reason I want to talk about this is I don't know. I haven't been able to wrap it around my head. I've been into investing and just, in little ways. My wife is the brains of our family, so she handles the real finances and knows all of our different accounts and all that stuff. But there's something I haven't been able to wrap my head around. And that is, I think there's a possibility that the Federal Reserve notes that we hold today might not be worth as much as they are today in a year or in 5 years or whatever. I'm going out on a limb here with your audience.
You think?
Come on, go along with me here. Play along.
Okay.
So I have to think, okay, if I want to store value, and I want to make sure that as we chat about this, we're not talking about what is a good investment. Is Bitcoin better than Dash, or should I invest in this stock or that stock or whatever? But just as a store of value, if I want to try to hang on to the acorns that I've been able to scratch together and we've been able to build our nest up with, my big question is stock. But in order to talk about it, I kind of just set up this little idea of we have 8 different people and they each have $1,000 that they can put into something. And they're going to put it in now. And then in 2 years, we're going to just see if we can right now predict. And I know it's a complex system, so it's not easy to predict, but keeping all the variables out that we can, let's see what we think would be the result if the people put their money into these various things. So a bicycle right now, if you got a $1,000 bicycle, that's nothing too fancy, but decent. In 2 years, what's it going to be worth if, and my scenario here is that there's precisely 1,000% inflation. So things go up 10 times what they are today. So the gallon of gas that let's say is $3 today, it is $30 per gallon in 2 years. And the gallon of milk is $30 instead of $3. And everything has just gone up by 10 times in that amount of time. Mm-hmm. So I would think that a bicycle the $1,000 bicycle today would be worth in 10 years about $10,000, provided you didn't ride it and no new technology, no black swan events. I think it would be roughly worth $10,000. So maybe a good way to store value, certainly better than better than US dollars, would be a bicycle. But there's going to be new technology, so maybe it's not best. And then more quickly, just going down the list, what about silver? What about buying the Roosevelt or the quarters, dimes, those, buying the old silver coins? What about buying land, finding a $10,000 residential lot somewhere and going in with 9 buddies and getting 1/10 of that? What will that be worth? I mean, muni bonds. When I say the E there, the shares of mainstream good stock, I'm talking about something that people are really, I'm not going to say a Warren Buffett business, but nothing crazy, just, lug nut business. You make lug nuts, so you're probably still going to need lug nuts for electric cars in 2 years. And then the index fund would be just a S&P or whatever, just a good index fund that's been performing decently. And then I love my new muck boots, so I'm pimping those a little bit. So 6 pairs of muck boots. Regardless of if the Chinese are running us or the Canadians or the Russians or whomever decides to take us over, no matter, people in cold country are going to want good warm boots. So might that be a better store of value? Definitely better than putting 20s under your mattress, as is the last one, having cash, putting $20 bills under your mattress. Those $1,000 worth of US dollars are going to be worth $1,000, whereas your bicycles will be worth $10,000. So long setup, but my big question comes back, and this is what I don't know the answer to. It comes back to E, stock. if I own 1 gazillionth of Caterpillar of that company, and Caterpillar keeps up with inflation well, then wouldn't stock be a good way to hold value? Wouldn't it still be worth 1 gazillionth of the total value of Caterpillar Incorporated or whatever company it was? I don't know what happens.
I mean, the stock market has continually gone up with inflation, but I don't think I don't think it's counteracted inflation perfectly by any means. I don't know what the ratios are. I haven't followed that. I'd have to research it to find out. I think the stock market might be better, just like as a general index fund or large mutual fund that covers a lot of different things to spread the risk. I bet that it would be better. It would probably perform better than boots and bicycles. I don't know if it would perform better than silver or like precious metals or land. Land, I'm probably speaking mostly out my ass here because I'd have to go do the research, but land has always been a good hedge against inflation, hasn't it?
That's what I've heard, and I heard from a friend who I said, "Well, if the Canadians take us over and they don't, they go down to the courthouse and they say, hey, does Shepherd really own?" They're not going to care what the previous government they gave ownership to. They're going to say, no, their new guy who's a good sergeant in their army, he now owns that land. But my buddy said, no, actually, history shows that throughout time, when new governments take over the plantation, they become the new masters or owners of the human livestock. They generally let them keep their title to land, keep using the land. So yeah, I think that could be good. Yeah, it's a tough call because the challenge with so many of those things is liquidity, and that's kind of what my wife and I were in the process right now of buying a residential lot in a community that might be kind of becoming a little bit of a libertarianish, anarcho-capitalist, fringe people community. And so we're buying it. Maybe we might move there someday, but more likely it's just a store of value. And so I'm thinking, what else should a person do if you wanted to pull out enough to pay your mortgage if you have a bad 2-year stretch? If you had enough in there that you could just pull out to do that, what would be safest in a Joey administration that would also be safe in a Donnie administration like we just had? I don't know.
I think. I don't know. I mean, we have to talk about cryptocurrency as one of the options here, and that has some big ups and big downsides right now, and I think the ups and downsides are going to be exacerbated over the next 5 years. So that's a worthy conversation. Stocks are going to be good until they're not. Like I have a feeling that like if things start going bad, like if we start getting to the point where hyperinflation is on the table as an imminent strategy that they're going to take, I think the first step to that, step one before going there, will be to sort of lock down or even confiscate stock market gains in some ways. Also, it bothers me that when you have a brokerage account, like those accounts are even more heavily sort of regulated with an easier path for the government to lock you out of those funds than even a normal bank account. And a normal bank account's easy for them to do that too. So like when I put money into even a checking account, I consider it as it's definitely like non-custodial ownership. Like you have a claim against the bank, but they actually hold the cash. They have the property, and they can do anything they want to it, and your only recourse is government recourse. So if it's the government doing it to the money, then you have zero recourse. So same thing with the stock market. I think to a larger degree, I think it's more risky because, like I said, if the economy goes sideways, I think one of the first things they'll have to come for is the stock market, and they probably won't go for institutional stock markets like big funds. They're probably going to go for the small guys and the medium-sized guys that can't fight back.
That's a good thought. Maybe.
I mean, I don't know. Don't listen to me. I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, this is not financial advice. Make sure you speak to your government certified and SEC advisor.
Yeah, precious metals is probably the second most important thing to talk about from your list. I think the price of the paper versions of those things are heavily manipulated on the stock market. So like gold and silver futures and options, I think that's very manipulated. But the like things like the actual spot price is much more solid. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just kind of giving you my thoughts from what I've seen. I do not hold near enough precious. You sent me a care package, and I opened it this morning. Let me see if I have it.
Cool, cool.
I'll be right back. Be right back.
Yeah. And so part of what we're talking about here is whether it's $1,000. That's kind of my thought, is whether it's $1,000 you're trying to of acorns you're trying to keep safe, or 10,000 or 10 million or 100 million. That's the challenge. Is what do you do with it? That's and I love silver.
Let me.
I used to have some. It's all gone now. I gave it all to Patrick.
I hope this wasn't all. So this I can show this, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, these are for giving away, I assume. I don't know if you can see that. So there is a silver coin taped at the top with a message, and I'll read the message. This is pretty cool. It says, "This is a silver mercury dime. It was made back in the old days when dimes were made of silver instead of the junk metal they are currently made. For every dollar that the silver spot price is, this dime is worth 7.2 cents. So if silver is at $10 per ounce, this is worth 72 cents. If silver is at $20 per ounce, this is worth $1.44. In 2020, this dime would have purchased a dozen eggs or half a gallon of gas or 1.5 minutes of a county planning director's time. What is it worth today?" And I think it's about $2. A little over $2.
Yeah, I think so.
When I did the math. Yeah. You can get a dozen eggs for a couple bucks now, right? Still? I don't know. I haven't been grocery shopping in a while.
Yep. Yeah, what I like about those little care packs, by the way, that's not for you, right? Those are for your kids. Oh. Those are for your kids. Those are not for you, mister.
I didn't know that.
Those are specially packaged just for them.
My precious.
So, and kind of my reason for giving those out is just to kind of have your kids go, "Ooh, what is it worth now?" And then by doing that, kind of a peaceful parenting kind of, now you get to have a discussion and talk about how some things hold value better than other things. And what is your dime worth today, honey? And, look it up.
That's good. I did not know that was for my kids, but thank you.
So I don't know. I think crypto is a great thing to invest in, as would be methamphetamine. And I think that they both face a similar challenge.
Wait, I thought I was the edgy. I thought I was the edgy one. Talking about dildos.
And so the problem, I think, with meth and cryptos, real cryptos, not ones that the Federal Reserve issues, but real crypto, is I think within a year or two or three or four or five, they will be illegal according to the masters. And so that will not make them lose value. I think that they'll have more value at that point. Just like if you had, and I don't know what portions meth is sold in, is a lid, is that a thing? A lid of meth, no, that's an old marijuana thing from the 70s. I don't know, but whatever, a little bit of meth, good job not knowing, we're good guys, but whatever a thimbleful of meth is worth, it's going to be worth a lot if it's illegal to have meth. But do you have the gonads to go put something up on the internet and say, "Hey, I've got a thimble of meth and some Bitcoin for sale"? And for the normies, and for those of us living somewhat mainstream lives who have homes with mortgages and those kinds of things, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's just a concern that I think we would be well advised to contemplate as we look at how we build our portfolio.
There are large institutions that are getting involved in Bitcoin, which to me is an answer to that risk, at least for that particular cryptocurrency. Now, the downside of that particular one is that it's very difficult to use in a private way. It is highly traceable if used even a little bit improperly, and especially if you buy or sell it through one of the exchanges, because the government has those regulated into full transparency effectively. They also have the same risk that I was talking about for the stock market, your brokerage account. Like, it's non-custodial. They have the cryptocurrency when you're using those. And so if the government tells them to confiscate it or to lock your account, you effectively do not have that property, or that it's not, cryptocurrency is not property. Yeah. That is a distinction between it and silver and gold. But they now have access to the keys that they need to control that value, and you've lost control of it. So liquidity is the problem. Liquidity and usefulness is the problem that I talked about 10 years ago, and it continues to be a problem for crypto. There are a couple options for it's really getting into and out of fiat Fed bucks. That's the problem for crypto. Doing that in a frictionless and also private way. The only service that I'm aware of that is able to do that right now, actually there are two, is localbitcoin.com, though I'm not sure how secure that is anymore. And then there's another service called BISQ, B-I-S-Q, which is a decentralized crypto exchange marketplace, which means that it's not controlled by any one institution that can be subpoenaed or whack-a-moled by any government. It's a technology that exists in a decentralized way, much like Bitcoin, that facilitates listing buy requests and sell offers for various types of crypto to and from, in and out of various crypto to crypto or crypto to fiat, and all that stuff. I have reached out to try and get an interview with one of the lead devs of that product on Anarchast. They have not responded yet, so maybe I'll go tweet them and get them to respond. And that is as fast, just to describe the liquidity that offers, that appears to be as fast as, let's say, the U.S. mail. So it might take a couple days instead of an instant withdrawal from PayPal. Like you can withdraw money from your PayPal into your bank account, I think, in less than 12 hours now. Last time I did it, it was near instantaneous. So it's not that fast, but it's a few days, depending on what you do. Because what they do is they if you want to purchase some crypto anonymously, you could, let's say purchase an Amazon gift card, which you can still do anonymously, and you give that to them, and then they hand you the crypto or whatever like that. So those types of transactions, all that would basically take is you going to the store and paying cash for an Amazon gift card. So maybe call that a 6 hour level of time investment to do that trade.
Yeah.
And that's also limited to, probably a couple $1,000s. There are many other methods that they have available on BISQ for larger sums. But yeah, I would just say, expect a couple days. Like, you can even mail cash in an envelope and then one day get crypto back. So depending on where you're mailing it, that's going to be several days of mail time. Obviously, there's risk involved in mailing cash, but
yeah, but you have professionals doing it though, so I completely trust what they do.
You have a rating market though as well, which rates the trustworthiness of the people you're buying and selling with, which is a very capitalistic, free market, voluntarist solution. If you have a high rating on BISQ, I trust you way more than Chase Bank.
Oh yeah. And I was mocking the Postal Service, I wasn't mocking BISQ at all.
Okay.
Yeah, those guys are great. So then, beyond what's just a good idea to invest in, it makes me think that if we do think inflation is coming, and I don't think 1,000% is hyperinflation, but it's scary. Yep. If that is something that we all predict is going to happen, a couple of the other things that maybe we ought to contemplate would be who it is that we associate with and how well they are doing planning for this change. So if your boss says that they're going to pay you $20 an hour, and that day inflation makes your value go up to $30 an hour and you still don't get paid for 2 weeks, that's bad stuff. So I was just pondering this the other day. I should probably get my house in order and have some way of saying that immediately I can go to the website or whatever and switch and say, okay, it is now my product A is worth 1/3 of a Bitcoin, and I don't know what's that come to, and 5 ounces of gold, whatever the average is between those two, that's what product A is worth, and forget having it based on Federal Reserve. And I don't know how many people are doing that.
Another thing worth mentioning, I think that I hear very few people talking about is, so for 30 years, maybe even longer, there's been people on various networks talking about the end is nigh, hyperinflation is coming, and we're going to be wheelbarrowing cash for bread. And I read a book several years ago, and there's a new edition of it now. I want to probably purchase just to see if there's any new information in it. It's called the Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I'm going to put a link in chat. Have you read this book?
No, I've just heard about it and have loved the quotes, but that doesn't make me certainly know anything about it.
So basically, this guy used to work for the United States government, CIA, I think. I forget the alphabet agency specifically involved, but his actual job was to go around the world and manipulate the economies of countries that were either stepping out of line in terms of policy or trade, or especially military, but also if countries were being too responsible with their currency. So there's two very big discussions to be had there. But the first part's obvious. Like if a country is causing the United States problems by, let's say, spreading communism, or being, let's say, a terrorist, whatever. Like that term means anything at this point. What they'll do is the hitmen, and this guy tells his story, will go into a country and as a good guy trying to help them, and they will bribe and surveil and deceive and plan coups and assassinations, and even go so far as to go in as a good guy, as a consultant to the country, and say, hey, your people are really behind on their infrastructure. You have, 1/10 the number of schools as us first world countries. We want to help you. Here, take this loan for several $billion from the central banks of the world, and you can use that money to go build your schools and build out your infrastructure, build more power stations or water purification plants or roads or whatever you need, thereby indebting them to the global banks. And what they then, that's step one. Step two is to trigger an inability on their part to pay the debt, which then effectively economically enslaves the country to the global, I hate to say the globalists.
Yeah, Mr. Global. Yep.
I mean, oh my God. Oh my God. We're being invaded by South American walruses.
So, but that then puts the country under the thumb of outside influence, which then can give them leverage to change their behavior militaristically, policy, or with trade agreements, things like that. It gives them leverage. Then the other side of that, though, that I learned from this book is for the countries that are being too responsible with their money, which was just like a big, bright, flashing red flag.
Yeah.
And the thing that I learned from the book was that, and the thing that I think most of the doomsayers about inflation don't think about, know about, talk about, I haven't heard from, maybe they do and I just haven't heard it, is that if all countries inflate their currency at the same rate, then inflation doesn't really exist and it can go on forever. It's only the disparity of inflation rates that will send a country into hyperinflation. So if you are inflating at a higher rate than other countries, that's when you're in danger of hyperinflation. So the number to look at is not how fast is America inflating the US dollar, It is how much faster or slower is the U.S. inflating in comparison to the other major countries. And so the idea is like, if you have a small country being super responsible and conservative with their money and not inflating it, they are vastly outperforming the large economies. And in so doing, threatening the economies of the major power players like the United States. Like a tiny country with a super responsible, solid, let's say non-inflationary, even gold-backed currency, that cannot be allowed to stand because it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to just knock that balance, that ratio, that one guy stands and the whole world's economy falls. Anyway, so that was...
It's like going out clubbing with your ugly fat friend, right? It's like you've all got to be at that same level, or one of you really looks very different than the other.
I'm questioning your Mr. Rogers title. All right, so...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
I'm kidding. Okay, take your shoes off.
And so when you mentioned...
This is Disenthrall. You can take your shoes off here.
You mentioned disparity also, and that was kind of the final question I'll pose or think about in this scenario is, who is going to fare better? The person renting a small apartment making $10 an hour, or the person with a net worth of $1 or $2 million who has a small plumbing business and owns 50% of a home? Who is going to fare better during hyperinflation, but inflation? I don't know the answer to that, but it's an interesting question.
The pinch comes from, again, it's the disparity, not between countries in this example, but the disparity between the end consumer type and the big banks. Because inflation begins with the big banks. When they print money, which just means adding a zero in a computer somewhere these days. People don't understand.
What a job that would be.
US dollars is basically crypto at this point. It's just numbers in a database. So they hand those new zeros to the banks first, and then the banks disseminate that through. It's a cycle, and I learned this from Jeff Berwick's book that I'm doing the audiobook for right now. But basically, the banks get the money on an agreement that they will turn around and buy government bonds with the new money. So it's like this weird cycle, and the banks benefit by getting interest on the bonds that they bought with money that they were handed. So it's
what
really,
a creature.
Woo! So the money starts with the big guys and it filters down. And so if the inflation happens too fast, then that ratio, that disparity of how much money is worth to the banks versus how much money it's worth to the person working as a waitress somewhere, right, that's what causes the damage, the real damage, right? So as long as, but see, like inflation, if they do it slow enough, kind of doesn't make too much of a difference, because if they do it slow enough, the business owner that runs the restaurant for the waitress will have to pay more for their food products, and as a result, they'll charge more for eating there. As a result, they'll have more money to pay their employees. As a result, so it's like if they do it slow enough, then the only thing that changes is not the value being exchanged, it's just the numbers people are writing down to exchange that value. It's only when they do it too fast.
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
Those are my thoughts, and I'm not an economist. That's just my brain thoughts. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's, and this is probably a section that when people are watching your video of this, they're probably going to fast forward. That makes me old, but they're going to fast forward through this boring economic portion. But I really think that we would be smart during these times, as in other times, to really, I want a bunch of rich anarchists out there. And if we're not minding our P's and Q's and doing stuff smarter than the neighbors on 20 houses to the right and left, they're going to have the economic power over us. If we play this smart, the real money is made in tough times. This is where people get rich, is when tough times come. And I think that one of the worst presidents we could have had at this point would have been Donnie. And I think Joey is a little bit worse. And we are headed for some pretty tough times, maybe. And if we are, and we all play it smart, and you guys are way smarter than I am, and you pull some good moves, how neat would it be if we could come out of this thing in 2 or 3 years and kind of like Bitcoin did for us? All the computer geeks in our philosophy that are all of a sudden now have a ton of money. That's kind of neat when that happens to a social movement like ours.
I think that's
so. I think we should be smart.
That's a worthy conversation. In what ways do you think voluntarists or anarchists should be behaving more intelligently right now? Like, what are your suggestions? What are your thoughts?
I think going back to the fundamentals of being good human beings, things like working a lot of hours smartly and working hard. If you work 6 days a week, 14 hours a day, producing something of value, then you're probably not going to be poor 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. Don't go buy a brand new car. Don't live in a bigger house than you can afford. Put 20, 30, 40% of everything that comes in into savings or investments. The Dave Ramsey stuff, the great book, The Millionaire Next Door stuff, just kind of saying we're living in a pretty special time. We are I had a hot shower today. Like, what a treat for a king. Last night I had chicken and wine and friends over in a warm house with a dog that costs money to feed and a fireplace going. Well, we also have electric heat. Like, in all of humanity, I am a wealthy king at this point. Okay, I'm just middle class.
Fiery with its beauty, its incredible detail. Tuning into it, they want to shatter your mind. Talking about Justin Bieber.
Exactly.
I'm ready. I got Alex Jones on tap. No, that's
perfect. You're ready. Yeah.
That's really good advice. The reason why it's such a threat to have the globalists out there is because they're wealthy enough to be able to affect the world. It's a power multiplier, a force multiplier. And if you are architecting your life and your daily routines such that you're not being productive and not amassing wealth, then you will always be at a lower level of ability to affect the world. But if you are able to architect your life and to become successful, then you can have a greater effect, which I think Shepard is nailing it. Like, we need a lot of that. We need a lot of highly motivated, highly productive, hardworking, awesome, awake, wealthy people in this movement. I wish I could come up with a ways to provide people the tool set to do that, but man, every time go ahead.
I wrote a book.
That's how to do it.
Well, and I'm pulling up a link right now. Let's see here. Harsh advice for the unemployed guy. And this doesn't apply only to the unemployed guy, but there's a lot of stuff in there that kind of would apply to everybody. It is smart to think about. The first part of the book is about how to work hard and start a business and make stuff happen in your world. And then the second part kind of gets into, it's a sneaky way to get into our philosophy. And I just talk about a lot of our philosophy stuff.